they had better mint technology than I realized back in 1783. Okay, maybe that's really not the case. Maybe this isn't really a mirror proof from 1783. As it turns out, this was made by the National Collector's Mint. And you see some silver toning around the edge, especially up here. This is probably silver-plated copper nickel. But what it's a replica of from 1783 is this goes back to when the Spanish Empire was at one of their strongest points, and they made a lot of coins for a lot of their territories around the world. This was when Carlos or Charles III was the king of Spain. On the back, you'll have a design like this. If it's actually in Spain, it would say España, Española, something like that here. But if it says Hispan or Hispanic, that means that it was a territory controlled by the Spaniards. And then to tell which area the coin was actually meant to be used in, you have to find the mint mark. And on this coin, the mint mark is right here, and that is a Mexico City mint mark, the M with the small O on top of it. In fact, I think that is still their mint mark. So this is a design that is found on a lot of the old Spain and Spanish territory coins. It is an 8 reals coin right here. This is a pre-decimal design where a lot of the countries in the world had a large silver coin that was pretty much the same from country to country. So the United States had a dollar that was about this size. Britain had a crown that was about this size. So a lot of countries would have a similar sized silver dollar. And in Mexico, it was the 8 reals. And every time I talk about that, I'm going to mention the term pieces of 8 was actually used to determine how much of an 8 reals you're looking at. So they made a coin that was about the size of a United States half dollar. That was 4 reals. And then they made a coin that was 2 reals that was about the size of a quarter. And then they made a 1 real that was a little bit bigger than a United States dime. And then they made a half real that was a little bit bigger than a United States half dime. And then they might make a half real or a quarter real or an eighth real out of copper. So that was something that was pretty common back then. The real coin like this would be worth, well, probably wouldn't exist in this quality, but I've seen a lot of coins in, let's say, very fine condition going for about $100 on eBay. I found this specific replica coin selling on Etsy for $30, but I don't know if it looks like they've sold some, but I don't know what you would find it at a coin shop or from a at an actual legit coin show. Now, if it was silver, it would be about $20 worth of silver, but I'm not going to crack this open or drill into it to see if it's what it's really made of. It probably is just plated. All of the coins in this video came from a dealer that specializes in tokens, and he has some very nice things. He has some that are priced at $1. The only one that I paid $1 for was the one we just looked at. Everything left on the screen cost me $3, and they were 4 for $1. We're going to now look at some Canadian trade dollars. Well, before we get to that, let's go to this coin. The post office in Canada is called the Canada Post. We have this Millennium Token that features a dove in the year 2000. Flip this one over, and we have a maple leaf. It says Millennium on it. This was made by the Royal Canadian Mint, but it doesn't put a Royal Canadian Mint mark on here anywhere. It's not an actual coin. Instead, this was made to go along with a Canada Post Millennium set. So oftentimes this specific token sells for $2, or you could, if you find it with the set of 3 stamps, that usually goes for $4. Now we'll look at some Canadian trade dollars. This one is from Niagara Falls, And it features the discovery of the falls, the 300th anniversary by, I guess, an explorer named Father Hennepin in 1678. I don't know the story, but it is a trade dollar from 1978 made by the Niagara Falls Chamber of Commerce. We see a symbol of the Niagara Falls. We have a Canadian beaver right here. We have the crown, the British crown. Looks like a radio or an alarm clock right there. A couple of lions on the other side of the shield. There were 40,000 of this particular token made. And this is from a series where the Niagara Falls Chamber of Commerce made a trade dollar just like this from every year from 1977 through 1989. The book that details the most information on these would be the Pelletier Standard Catalog of Canadian Municipal Trade Tokens. And in this book, this is catalog number ON for Ontario 81. For our next Niagara Falls trade token, we have a similar back on this one to the last one, except the date is now 1980. This one features the Spanish Aerocar, which today is more usually called the Whirlpool Aerocar. It's called the Spanish Aerocar because it was designed by a Spaniard and originally built in 1916. So it is a design. It's been rebuilt a few times every 20 or 30 years since then, but if you can see it here, it's a large box that can hold a couple dozen people, has a roof to it, and then has this arch with wheels on it that goes across cables, which goes across the Niagara River. When I went to Niagara Falls, which was probably 30 years ago, I didn't see this because it's a little bit further down from the falls, and so I didn't have a chance to see it, but it essentially acts like almost like a ski lift, where it goes across some cables, goes all the way across the river into America, but you don't stop there. It goes around and comes back to the Canadian side. This one in the Pelletier catalog is ON 114. The next one in the series dates 1981. If you've noticed on the bottom out of the date, it says something along the lines of expires December 31st of that year. If you're not familiar with Canadian trade dollars or trade dollars in general, what this is some local authority, in this case it's the Niagara Falls Chamber of Commerce, usually for a fundraiser, will create these tokens that you can purchase and then redeem at select merchants around town. And several businesses, probably a lot of the tourist type places, will tell you that they can take them. Now, I suspect that most people did not actually spend these because these were sold to be souvenirs. If you were to pay $2 for a token and then you could spend it for $1 at a store, then why would you do that? So I don't think these were intended to be circulated, but you could. And at the same time, it was only people that agreed with what the local body, in this case the Chamber of Commerce, were doing. So if you went to the next province over and tried to spend it, no one there would take it because it's not actual legal tender or currency for the entire country. It's just a bunch of people have gotten together and said, we're going to offer, or we're going to take this and we'll spend it and we'll be part of the program. Now, the token from 81 highlights the legendary Indian Maid of the Mist. And so I suppose a lot of places have a legend like this. Now, I suppose it's a lady who had an unrequited love, couldn't bear the thought that she couldn't be with the one she wanted to be with, or maybe the one she wanted to be with was died in some kind of accident, and so she couldn't take it anymore. She got in a canoe, went over the edge. And then today, who knows whether or not that story actually happened, but the boat that goes around the base of Niagara Falls is today called the Maid of the Mist, so take that for what it's worth. Now, the first one, there were 40,000 of them made. The second one of the Spanish Aerocar, they made 20,000. This one, they bumped it up a little bit. They made 45,000 of these. The first two are made out of nickel, but this one's nickel-plated steel. This one has a catalog number of ON 137. We're going to continue the trend of Canadians featuring Indians, and we're going to go take a look at this trade dollar from British Columbia honoring the Tsimshian Indians. On this 1978 Tsimshian trade dollar. This was in a series released in 1978 called the Indian Heritage Series 2. And I think there were 5 or so different indigenous tribes that were featured in that series. And each of them honored a specific leader. The leader here, I guess that's pronounced Lejaic, must have had a date of lived from circa 1820 to 1894. This one is nickel-plated steel. The next one is going to be from the town of St. Catharines, Canada, also from Ontario, Chamber of Commerce. This one has a larger expiration date, so they say these are used good for legal tender, but they want to make sure that people don't stockpile these and start trying to spend them later, so they do put a date where you can no longer use them anymore, which was at the end of that current year of 1981. Now, I mentioned these are Canadian trade dollars. I haven't seen these hardly anywhere in America outside of Hawaii. I do have a Hawaii trade dollar, but not really any from anywhere else in the United States. I've got a few of these Canadian ones. This one features the Wellend Canals. So kind of an interesting view of a boat going through a canal and horsemen there serving Canada since 1829. This one, they made 15,000 of these. We are not done in Canada. We have this next even larger token that was made during Canada's Centennial in 1967. So the Confederation. So there were lots of tokens made this one year, including a couple that were made by the Royal Canadian Mint that was packaged with proof sets. What makes this one different is this one honors the mining history. So around the edge it says minted by the Ontario government to commemorate the roles of mining in the development of Canada. And so on the coin then in the middle it says containing gold, nickel, zinc, platinum, silver, copper, and iron minted in Ontario. And so what this makes you think, if it says containing, then you're probably thinking, wow, this one token must contain all of these things. I don't think that's the case. Of course, if it had that much metal in it, then some of those do not appear to be that color. This is reported to actually be mostly copper nickel with 15% zinc. Sometimes that mixture gives you something that looks to be silver-ish. I suppose it's possible they could have taken trace amounts of gold and platinum and silver and I guess iron while they're at it and just dip a little bit of it into all of the metals just to say that it's in there. But maybe they're just saying that these were minted by people who the things they mine contain these metals. That's probably what they meant, but maybe they're trying to be sneaky with it too. So this was originally sold in a two-piece set. There was another one that looks just like it that was made out of brass. So brass is not one of the metals listed on here, although I know that brass is made out of a combination of metals. This one sells for pretty good if you can find someone who wants to buy it. It sells between $3 to $15 when you look to buy it online. This next one, so as it turns out, I actually purchased these back in last May, and it's just taken me forever to get around to actually making this video because I was just so busy in the summer I didn't make any videos, and I'm going back now and trying to fix that. I picked this up. It's obviously from the Royal Canadian Mint, but I had no idea what it was. And then when I went to my local coin shop a few months later, I actually saw this, and that helped me to figure it out. Let's go ahead and look on the inside. This is not an actual coin or token, although I've heard it called a medallion. It looks like it's made out of pewter, but maybe it's some other metal. So what this is, in 1988, to celebrate the Calgary Olympics, the years leading up to that, the Royal Canadian Mint made a set of 10 silver coins, so almost the same size as that first Spanish replica that we saw. But imagine 10 of those that came in a box. And then there was, so each of them was sterling 92.5% that had a face value of $20 on them, which they would then sell for $37 each. Or you could buy the complete set of 10 for $370. And if you got the complete set of 10, there was also an 11th hole in there with this in it. Or you could pay an extra $255 to get a gold $20 coin. Now, of course, the gold coin has really jumped up in price. I don't know if you could have actually purchased it from the mint that way, but whether you could or not, you could pop this out and then put the gold coin in its place. And so the gold coin was about the size of this, maybe not as thick, but it's a coin that's about 56% gold, so I guess 14 karat, with just a spot price today of a little bit over $500. So that was pretty close to a quarter of an ounce of gold. And then when you put in 40% filler, maybe it was about that size. And then now we're going to move on to Israel, where we've got an uncirculated token here, where at the bottom it's labeled as Jerusalem Reunited. All of the design here is on the shape of a dove, so signifying peace. Different sites from around Jerusalem featured here. This is going to be about the third or fourth token like this that I have, which was produced by the Israeli Government Coins and Metals Corp, which is the company that mints all of the Israeli coins. And so the ones like I've had of this in the past were actually added to proof sets. So you get a proof set or a mint set, and then they would have this extra medallion that they would add into the set, which features some kind of history. Oftentimes it features a history that you would see in the Old Testament. So those are always neat when I find them. This next one is also from Israel. And I like this as it represents an old rotary dial telephone. Now, I grew up with parents who wanted to have the hold on to the rotary phone for as long as they could because they didn't like technology. So these existed in my childhood. I grew up with a rotary phone like this. But just a couple of years ago, the United States Innovation Dollar Series also had a rotary phone that reminded me a lot of this design. Didn't have the hole in it, of course, but this one was actually a telephone token for use in Israel. So then when we flip this one over, it has let me go ahead and point back on this side. There is a date on here on the Jewish calendar, 5726. That translates to 1966. On this side, it has the word for telephone in both Hebrew and Arabic written here at the bottom side. You'll see a lot of telephone tokens that have this groove down the middle of it like that. And then at the top here, it essentially has the words for the Israel Postal Company, who would have been the telephone companies. And so in their language, that says Doar Yisrael. So that's the last of the international tokens, but I've got a couple more that I found interesting here. This is a Beatles token featuring the Fab Four. We've got John, Paul, George, and Ringo on here. Look on this side, it's got commemorating the 1964 Beatles visit to the United States. I grew up in the 1980s as a Beatles fan. And so after doing some digging on this particular token, I came across, don't know if this story is true or not, but several different people have been told this story and have posted it on the internet. So apparently there was a candy or an ice cream company in the New Jersey area that decided they would capitalize on the new popularity of the Beatles by issuing this token. Let's say you buy 5 candy bars, send in the wrappers to them, they would send you back this token until they were told you're not allowed to do that because you haven't paid for the Beatles likenesses to be on your things. You've not gotten permission to do that. You must stop. And so they had a ton of these tokens left over. They left them in a warehouse, didn't know what to do with them, so they just let them sit there for decades in a warehouse. Fast forward a few decades after that, and it was time to clear out that warehouse, and someone came across these. What are we going to do with all these? They decided to give them to Yoko. This would have been just a few years ago. So Yoko Ono took possession of all these, but she didn't know what to do with them either. She was already scheduled to make a visit to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. So she decided, I'm going to give it to them and let them decide what to do with them. There may have been stipulations that you're not allowed to sell them, and when you give them to people, you have to tell them that they cannot sell them either, that this was to be something given away for free. So now, apparently, from what I've read people say this year, you go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, someone's going to ask you if you like the Beatles, and if you say yes, they will give you one of these tokens, which was actually produced in 1964. Is that a true story? I don't know, but a lot of people are telling it on the internet. One final token that I have today is this good luck souvenir. We have a Hispanic man wearing a sombrero laying by a cactus. This is an American attraction that you may have heard of called South of the Border. And when I'm not looking at coins, I like photography and I like quirky old-fashioned tourist attractions. And there's one right off the interstate at the border between North and South Carolina. So on the south side of that Carolina border, someone built a tourist attraction with a lot of Mexico theming. So they have a really large sombrero observation deck, or a mascot named Pedro, who is a really large one of those as well, holding a sign south of the border, and that's what's depicted on this south of the border token. Surprisingly, I've never visited there, even though I've been to Myrtle Beach like 3 times, and it's just maybe an hour out of my way from Myrtle Beach, but my kid didn't want to go out of his way to stop there. So someday I'll have a chance to go. All right. Hope you like this token video. I usually make videos of world coins, but I'll focus on other things that are related hobbies just like this one. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.